everybody of the Fandom Portals community. I'm sitting here today with a good friend of mine. His name is Lolovai Towler. Now, we've known each other for quite some time. We do like to involve ourselves in watching TV and film, and he's probably one of the people who I like to talk about these things the most with, just because he's got a very analytical brain, a very logic-based brain, but he also enjoys things and can tell the effort that goes into a TV series, and he's really great at rating stories as well. So that's my perspective of Lolovai. But Lolovai, would you like to say hello to the people of Fandom Portals?
It's a very, very kind perspective of you. Thank you, my friend. Hi, everyone. I'm Lolovai. So I'm just like an amateur movie content enjoyer, like yourself. In particular, what I like to do is as soon as I've watched some content, especially something that I've enjoyed or something of historical background, I also like to immediately go and watch reviews of it, or perhaps fact check behind the scenes, look at the trivia behind things, and I pick up a lot of useless information, which I'm pretty happy to impart with you. So really, really happy that you're here to tune in with us and to see if you agree with what we're about to say. Perhaps you'd like to add in something in the comments. Very much like to build this community that we've got going on.
Absolutely. Sounds amazing. And that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you about this show, or the topic that we're talking about today. So Lolovai and I have decided to do this episode on our guest spot of Fandom Portals today about the impact of good writing in starting a long-running TV series or franchise. And the topic in which we've decided to base that investigation on today is The Bear, which is an FX show which also streams on Disney+. And Lolovai, can you tell us a little bit about how you first encountered this show and what made you click play on it to start with? What were your first impressions?
I think probably most recently that it had won awards. I hadn't heard of it at all. I don't open up Disney Plus as much unless a new Star Wars show comes up or something has been recommended. It's probably my least used platform. However, I did notice that it had recently won awards for its second season, and I was looking for a new show, something for new stimulation, and I gave it a go, and very happy that I did. Probably a few months ago, my friend Aaron might have noticed, I did my own just amateur review on 4-5 shows that I've found this year, and The Bear I'd actually ranked number 1 over Fallout, which was my number 2. And even though Fallout is probably more closer to what I enjoy more, science fiction themes, video game themes, pop culture kind of stuff, that's definitely my kind of enjoyment factor. The Bear is a much more better show, in my opinion.
I completely agree. And the way that I sort of found this show is, first of all, that post that you're referring to, I did see that, and I saw that you rated it above Fallout. And I'm a person that really did enjoy Fallout. I was thinking, how can this be better than a show that is already fantastic? And then after querying you about it and talking to you about other shows, you actually recommended this to me. You said, hey, have you tried The Bear? And I was like, I don't really like cooking shows. Like, I'm not really into that. I'm not a MasterChef fan. I don't think it's for me. And you said, give it a go. It's 28 minutes of your life. If you don't like it, fine. So I did. And I watched it. And the first 28-minute episode is an absolute testament to really good writing, really good use of screenplay, and just an amazing piece. I'll call it art, I think. I think it's a complete package of put together music, sound, dialogue, cutaway scenes, camera work. I think it's got the whole package in the first episode. And again, it blew me away that it did so much in 28 minutes. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All of the lovely people at Fandom Portals, we are going to look at the very first episode of The Bear, and we are going to look at how to establish a franchise during the writing phase of it, or how a well-written first episode can engross viewers for the long run. All right. Obviously, this will contain spoilers for those of you that have not seen The Bear, but hopefully it'll give you a landing point to enable you to go and check it out and watch the remaining 3 seasons that it has at the time of this recording, the third one having just been released very, very recently. All right, so first of all, Mr. Ted, directed by Christopher Storer, also written and created by him. Can you tell me from the get-go, the first scenes of the first episode, what kind of hooked you straight away?
I would say after the dream sequence, the dream sequence right at the beginning goes for about 10 seconds.
Hmm.
And I'm just kind of like, where's this show going? There's a guy walking up to a bear cage and and then all of a sudden he wakes up and he's inside his kitchen. I got to give it straight away to the soundtrack that they repeatedly actually use throughout the series, but not exorbitantly. They use the riff from a song called New Beats. And it puts you into this fight and flight response because he's waking up and he's looking at the clock and it's 6 a.m. and he's immediately into what he's got to do. He's getting his vegetables ready. He's getting his deliveries for the meat. Immediately, he already has a problem. The meat has been under ordered because they don't have enough money. You would have noticed, Aaron, in these shots, like when he's on the phone, he's trying to find this meat connect. He's trying to do deals and things like that. There are like little bits of paper and such stating that, this is due, implying that he's working at a place where they're not making money and he's really behind the pump. And then all of a sudden you realize, hey, he actually stayed the night here. He's woken up on his freezer. He slept there last night. He hasn't left yet. This is hell on earth. It goes on and it goes straight into prepping. And then other customers, not other customers, I apologize, other characters of the show start to come in. And they don't need to be introduced because the protagonist, Carmy, immediately starts talking to them. And through their conversations, you understand their role and what they're there to do. They haven't come in and said, "Oh, I'm a baker." No, Carmy will go to him and say, "Hey, I need these. I need you to do this method so that the bread is in a particular way." So then and then he goes, "Well, I need the mixer to be working correctly," which is a type of attack and defense sort of screenwriting, which I'd like to elaborate a little bit more as we go along. But as these events unfold, he's continuously looking at the clock. You're feeling really intense as well because, for a lot of people that don't work in a kitchen, you kind of feel like, wow, kitchens are actually pretty hectic. And I feel like anyone that watches, let alone just this episode alone, would respect that this is doing kitchen work a lot of justice.
I think so as well. I can also attest to that immediate feeling of anxiety as soon as the soundtrack hit, but also coming from the scene where he's obviously in that dream sequence, the bear comes out of the cage and just lunges at him after he's trying to shush the bear as well. And that was sort of symbolic to me. I was like, okay, obviously the restaurant is going to be called the Bear, like that's him trying to sort of tame the beast kind of thing. So that immediately deep dove me into it. And I liked what you added about the pieces of paper strewn across the desk and the wall as he was on the phone ordering the meat, because one of the pieces of paper that was on there that is established very early as well is the actual death notice or the eulogy or the funeral notice of his brother, whose name is Mitch, I believe. Is that correct?
Actually, we're talking about, oh, no, it's Mike.
Mike.
I asked why it was Mike. Yeah.
So there was a death notice on the desk about a gentleman whose name is Mike, who ends up being Carmy's brother. And through the rest of the series, or through the rest of the episode, you find out that this restaurant actually belonged to him. Those staff were his staff, and Carmy has come in to take over this. And that, to me, was what drew me into the show, because this guy has taken on the mantle of something that he didn't create. And then early on, it's also established that he is quite a well-known chef in quite a well-known restaurant, and he's very, very good at what he does. And I think that's also established through the shots of him preparing and prepping his meals, obviously knowing how a kitchen is run. And then he's in this, it is a dingy looking sort of diner at the start of this first episode, and he's obviously a fish out of water or very out of place. And you sort of start to question, why is he here? What's going on? What happened to his brother? And it's those kinds of questions that keep you sort of invested as you're going along. So I really enjoyed that very first sequence. And as soon as that, as you said, that music hit, I was like, okay, we're on here. As it went through, do you want to talk about the duality or the double sort of existence that Carmy obviously has? So he comes from a place of expertise, and he's walking around this kitchen with staff that don't really seem to respect him at this point. Or at least that's what I got from watching the first episode. But he goes around calling them chef, and he uses hospitality terms like behind and corner as he's in the kitchen. So he's actually trying to introduce something into this space. Do you want to talk about how that develops as the first episode goes on as well, Lolovai?
Yeah, it could have been that those practices were already instilled. Definitely, I would say the chef, introduction of calling each other chef was definitely his idea because he explains why. So it is possible that your corners and your behinds are standard kitchen terms. And anyone that works in the kitchen could properly chirp in here and let me know if I'm right. But what I like about it is it's also teaching the audience how kitchens are run. It's interesting how much communication and teamwork and synergy are required. So by saying corner and behind, it's just no different to indicators for cars on a road, and it makes it work. There's so much more in a kitchen that is much more complex than you think, but it's delivered in a way it doesn't treat the audience like you're an idiot. So it either assumes you already know, or it teaches you without just saying this is why we do what we do. Speaking of, talking to your audience like an idiot, I want to go back and discuss things about attack and defend, establishing characters. In particular, there's a scene where Carmen and his cousin, who has arrived late because he had to do daughter pickups, they're in the freezer and they're talking now without. They are identifying who they are without just exposition dumping information onto you by using what's called in story writing attacking and defending. So his cousin would attack Carmy by saying, hey, we never would do these kinds of things here at this restaurant when your brother was here. And then Carmy would defend and say, why did he leave the restaurant to me? So in those bits of information, even if you hadn't looked at the notes beforehand and saw that there was a death notice and things like that, there were clues foreshadowing up to this moment. Now, up to this point, you have known that there's a brother who's passed away, they're cousins, and it's also been left to Carmy. And it's a natural transition of attack, defend, attack, defend. An example of poor attack, defend, and I don't want to delve into it too much, but because I believe we might talk about it later, but there's a scene in the first episode of The Acolyte where Yord and Osha discuss. But what actually happens is Yord is just talking straight at Osha and says, well, your two mothers are dead because of this, this, and this.
Yeah, it almost feels
unnatural. Yeah.
Like you say, he says to her, like, your training was hard enough as it is. I was like, isn't that up to her to decide kind of thing? But yeah, I understand what you mean with the back and forth.
Yeah, it comes unnatural because he's explaining her backstory. Like she already knows this. So why are you telling me this is not attack and defend? That is exposition for the audience to point out that she has two mothers and they're both dead.
That's exactly right.
Because she doesn't know what to say. As soon as he said that, she just looks and goes, okay.
What do I say to that? I think the initial scene with his character's name's Richie, is that correct?
Yeah, Richie. That's right.
Richie. Yeah, the cousin's name is Richie and Carmy. Their first meeting is very telling as well because it is an extremely passionate discussion, obviously held in private. You already kind of know that Richie has an established relationship with the staff just on how they interact with him before he goes in, and you know that the staff don't really respect Carmy because of the incident that's happened before with, the pot and calling him chef and then somebody questioning that. So there's like a power struggle there, and then obviously that punching statement of, well, why didn't he leave it to you? That questions for the audience as well. Why didn't he leave it to Richie, who's obviously bit more comfortable in this setting? Why did he want Carmy to go and have this sort of restaurant? And I think there is also looking a little bit deeper at the characters. If you wanted to sort of delve into the emotions of the characters as well, they're obviously still in a grieving process because the way that they're talking to each other is very aggressive, as you said, attack and defense, but it's also very accusatory, and you can tell that they really don't understand the motivations of what's happened as well, so they're still processing this fact. And I think that comes along a little bit further as the episode develops. I'll tell you about one of my favorite scenes. It was, how we'll talk about Sydney as well when she gets hired, but Sydney obviously does a family dinner, and there's obviously some expectation that goes around that family sort of dinner before they open. She has to prepare a meal for the staff, and they talk to her in various regard to that. But I love the shot of everybody sort of eating around that table. They're all talking about what they're grateful for. It gives us a really great insight into the relationship of the building, even though it's so hectic. It's so it's just chaos the whole time of cooking and ordering and moving things from this way and that, and everybody's doing their own job. So then they have this moment of peace where they sit down with what they call the family and they just eat and enjoy and talk. And I thought it was very interesting, the separation between Carmy at this point and the family during that dinner. Like, Sydney's newer than Carmy, but Carmy was sort of standing up, looking out the window, very driven, very focused on what the restaurant sort of had to offer. And the big lineup that was coming outside because he just funded this big this tournament from the pinball machine. But I thought that it was very, very establishing to see, okay, this guy is the leader at the moment. He's also on the outer, but he's also one-track minded. He's kind of focused on his restaurant, whereas these guys here are just sort of loving the fact that they're together, working, they get this meal, and it's sort of that establishment that wasn't outwardly said. It's all from the conclusions you draw as an audience. So as you said before, it doesn't treat you like an idiot, which is the type of storytelling that I love. I love where we get to learn more about characters and we're not explicitly told, hey, this person is XYZ. I just love being able to look and draw those connections myself. And speaking of Richie and Carmy and the way that relationship develops just over this 28-minute episode, did you want to have a chat about the moment where we knew that even though they're at odds with each other, there is still some very much a big connection of family and love within this episode? And of course, I'm talking about the moment where Carmy goes outside to try and calm the mob. Did you want to elaborate on that, Lolovai?
Yeah, because when Carmy goes outdoors to calm the mob, there's a moment where he loses control because he doesn't know what to do. He's not a people's person at all. You'll learn that he's a bit of a psychopath, but I won't go into that too much. He starts getting beaten up by the mob, and that's when his cousin Richie comes out, and he's a people's person, and he fires a gun in the air, and gets everybody to get back in order and back in line. That's when you realize the parallels between what his cousin actually does, because he's the only one that's not cooking anything. He's the people's person, so he's to face the franchise, as so to speak, or at least he sees himself to be. And so his skills are dealing directly with people. He understands how the streets of Chicago work. He has experience. Yeah, so his experience plus his people skills conflicting with Carmy's New York experience of fine dining, but also lack of people skills is conflicting between them. So there is some respect and understanding they need each other at this present moment. Whether they want each other to be there is a different story.
And let's have a chat about the other member of the family that's introduced during this first episode in the character of Sugar. Introduced briefly as the sister, she is bringing denim items for Carmy to sell to use as fundage for various different ingredients. Now, I got the impression from my first and only viewing of the episode that these denim jackets are very special to Carmy, or this denim product is very special to Carmy, to the point where I kind of got the vibe, and I think it's explicitly said that Sugar needed to get the jacket that Mike left for him or gave to him. So those denim kind of products, I don't know if they move further into the season, but it allows us to then go and meet this Sugar character who is his sister, and she actually comes in as the audience's questioning voice, because at this point I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's obviously got this obligation to his brother, why is he so adamant to stay here? And she back and forths with him as well, to the point where he finally says the statement, I'm going to fix this place, and she says, well, nobody's asking you to. And it kind of brought in that dichotomy of familial duty versus personal ambition. And I'm not sure what happens later on in the series, but straight away I'm really sort of drawn to the fact and drawn to this main character that is, he's got his own ambition and he's applying that love of food that he has to this familial duty that he feels like he's having to do. Now, whether that's because he's doing it in an honorable way or whether he's doing it as a sense of guilt, I think I'll watch as the season goes on. But did you want to talk about the establishing of the characters in terms of Carmy, what we know about his relationship with the rest of the staff as well? Because there's an incident with a character named Marcus, who's the guy that is the baker, and the mixer incident. And then Carmy actually earns his respect by the end, and it's all done through amazing writing and conversational dialogue techniques. Did you want to discuss that, Lolovai?
Yeah, so going back onto the baker Marcus, so he would give instructions for Marcus to make the bread better, and Marcus would say, "Don't tell me how to do my job." But the way that Carmy is, because he is a little bit of a psychopath. And when I say psychopath, I don't mean that's a person that loses his temper. He rarely loses his temper, but he talks in a very assertive way. He explains the correct method in doing so. So if you were to think about this as like a layer of the cake, then there are other layers of the cake where other scenes happen, and then Carmy comes back, and the bread is immaculate, and he gets compliments from Marcus, like, hey, this is actually correct. So he gains their respect. That also happens with another character, and her name escapes me. She's like a Spanish lady, and he would say chef, and she would say Jeff.
Jeff, yes.
She can speak English, but she's just trying to be difficult because she's like, hey, I've been here longer than you.
Tina's her name, yeah.
Tina, that's right. Yeah. So, again, like, Tina is also conflicting as well, but not as overbearing because he's the head chef. This is his place. He pays her wages. But there is still a level of disrespect. Same again. He comes back to her and they try the food, the meat, because he explained why it took longer for him to make this meat because of X, Y, Z. They try it, and they say, yeah, then it's fine. So then gets disrespect because it's like, this guy clearly knows what he's doing.
And the audience can come to that conclusion as well, especially after we talked about Richie goes out with a bullhorn and the gun to calm the mob. He comes in and he tries one of the roles as well. And even though he just told Carmy, you have to cook the spaghetti is what makes us money. That's it. You don't know what goes on here. He goes into the back, he tries one of the rolls and he eats it. And you can just see the look of just elation on his face. Like, he's just totally enamored by this cooking and this meal that he's cooked. And, he puts it down and you can see he's obviously frustrated. He doesn't go and tell him this, but he also probably respects the amount that Carmy knows in terms of food.
And that's just fantastic acting as well. That's another great thing about the show. The actors are really good at just, with facial expressions, just eating some food, and you're able to convey emotions of, oh, I was wrong. Wow, this tastes amazing. I'm actually depressed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So again, it's more show, don't tell. Like, you understand, because we're humans and we can look at each other's faces, we understand emotions better than any other species. And to be able to convey that in that looks natural, like, put yourself in that actor's shoes and pretend you're doing that to a camera.
Yeah.
In fact, try it yourself.
It's difficult to do, especially like knowing you're being watched and knowing that it has to be nailed and thinking about the motivations of your character. It's definitely a talent, and I think it's all credited back to obviously the talent of the actors, but it's a very well written piece in terms of it's character driven. The scope isn't very large. Like, I naively thought, this is just about a restaurant, and on the surface, when you look at the story, you can just enjoy a story about how a guy comes in, cooks some food, and turns this place into something bigger. But I think it's that undertone, that level of subplot that really kind of keeps me wanting to come back, because I'm really intrigued about the death of their brother or their other cousin. I get the feeling that it was quite sudden, and I also wonder about his motivations and whether he knew something about Carmy and Richie that they perhaps don't know about themselves. And this is all coming from just watching the first 28-minute episode. I personally have not watched the rest of the Bear. I wanted to come into this as the new perspective. So all of these questions that you're hearing me ask are ones that genuinely come from just watching that first episode and reading and listening to that sort of written dialogue come out of these actors' mouths. Now, there was another thing that sort of dawned on me that you'd spoken about, Lolovai, and that's the fact that Carmy is a bit of a psychopath. And, I got from this first episode that he was definitely ambitious and he was definitely driven. But now that you've mentioned that, a scene comes to mind for me when he was looking for his knife, and the knife has gone missing through the entire kitchen. Nobody knows where it's gone, and it comes to the point where Richie's character is addressing and telling a story to the staff. They're not working, and it's coming close to crunch time, and he looks down and he sees that his knife is directly underneath one of the benches there, and he just sort of slow cuts and fades away, and it does one of those things in cinematography where the sound just sort of goes away. He gets that tinnitus sort of scoped vision, and he sees the knife, he bends down, he picks it up, and then it kind of flashes, and it flashes to a scene where somebody's obviously on a gurney covered by a white sheet, and then it flashes again, and the scene completely flashes to a beautifully seasoned piece of steak or meat, And then the soundtrack completely changes as well. It goes into this very nice sort of music as it happens there. And that sort of journey that you go on, now that you've mentioned that, he's a psychopath, I'm not suggesting, hey, he's a killer or anything like that, but it kind of plants that seed of, hey, like he's got that internalized thought that's sort of happening during this moment. He's attaching himself to all these sort of different memories as well. He's obviously not processing things well. How's that going to come out in the rest of the series as well? So I think just going off the small scenes that you go through in the cinematography and the different way that all of these different styles of audio are stitched together too, it really evokes just an experience for the viewer.
Yeah, and moving forward, moreover on that, with the show, I'm finding that there are no real like wasted scenes. It's definitely, from what I've seen so far, I haven't watched all of season 3, but it's a plotted show. So meaning that they've always known what the main events were going to be and what it's going to kind of finish on, rather than TV shows that are sort of like, you can tell that they've had to change the direction mid-season of what they were doing. So they were just sort of prancing as it goes. I think a fantastic example of that would be the TV show Power, one of the Power books, Ghost. No, not Ghost. Yeah, the one with Tommy in it. They literally change direction, kill off characters that looked like they had prominence with this show. So whether it's be like Denim Jackets, discussions about family, things like that, they always do come back up and explain more in a cohesive and natural way.
Yeah. That's really rewarding for a viewer as well when you're watching something and you take the effort to kind of notice a scene like that and you think, oh, this harkens back to when I saw XYZ in previous episodes, and it just makes for a really cohesive show. So I actually really look forward to seeing how this develops. I'm most excited to see how Carmy's relationship with his family develops, especially in terms of Richie, because obviously there's 2 more seasons. They're not going to give up on this venture. I'm just wondering how it's going to all sort of pan out. And I think the way that this first episode was written goes back to what you said before about it being extremely well planned, extremely well thought of, and taking a character sort of centric approach. And I think that's what invests viewers the most, is when you're looking at a character, you're seeing relatable sort of instances. You're seeing the struggle of family versus ambition and work life and respect and all those different sorts of themes come up. And the amazing part is that it all happens in 28 minutes. Like, I love what you said about no scene is wasted, because it actually feels like even the small cutaway scenes are very perfectly crafted in this show. I think it's great.
Yeah, and this episode's only scratching the surface of what you've just said. And you're also going to love the actor choice for Michael. You're going to love it. I won't tell you who it is. I won't even tell you after this episode.
Very good. I love it.
You'll have to watch it for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think we might leave it there, Lolovai, for this first sort of really great appreciation for a good piece of art in the form of The Bear, which is available for you guys to watch if you want to on Disney Plus, or at least it is here in Australia. And I just want to thank you, Lolovai, for having this awesome discussion with me and being on Fandom Portals and being a part of the community. And I'll definitely have you back on again to do another one of these, because I just love talking to you about this stuff.
Yeah, me too. I'm just a fan. It'll enjoy the things.
I appreciate it. All right. We'll catch you later, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye.